This meeting is being recorded.
Greetings and welcome to Living Theurgy. I'm Hercules Invictus, and today I am proud to announce Brandy Williams, Tony Mierzwicki, and Apollonius. And we'll be exploring Greek dance, sacred marriages, and many other interesting topics. So we'll go around, everybody introduce yourselves, share what is new and upcoming. I know some of you have projects that are whose completion, whose release is approaching. Brandy Williams.
It's wonderful to be back, and I do have a new thing that I'm going to be doing. There's a conference, a virtual conference on women in magic that Jenna Tilendrew is sort of putting together. She's one of our fellow Llewellyn authors, and she very kindly asked me to be keynote for the conference, which was really flattering and lovely. And it has inspired me to reissue The Woman Magician. So that'll be my next my next project, to go put that book back in print. And this one I'm going to do both as an ebook and a physical book. So I'm looking forward to that. That'll be in July. So both of those things will happen in that time frame.
Awesome. And for the love of the gods, that's come out as an ebook?
Yes, it's available on Amazon as an ebook. So it's there. You can download it.
I will link to it today. Thank you very much. Tony Mierzwicki.
I've started going to events. I noticed that there are a number of things that are opening up. I was at an event in Redlands last weekend called Witchypalooza. So basically the pagan community is starting to come together physically rather than just doing things online. At the end of this month, there are a couple of Beltane celebrations, and I will be attending one that's put on by the Green Man. And that's going to be, I can't actually say where it is because it's an off-site location, but it's in the LA area. I just think that it's important to go along and support events, do a little bit of networking and the like. So basically going along to events, doing a little bit of writing. Those are the only things that are relevant to Theurgy that I've been engaging in.
And you consistently write for Pathos.
Yes.
And so you've been doing that quite consistently, and we have links to your articles there.
Yes, thanks for that. Appreciate it.
And are you going to do something on today's topic since you did all this research for it?
I'm actually quite tempted to. I found a couple of sources on dance, and I wanted to share the information that I gleaned from them. So it's going to start off with a history of dance. The earliest representations of dance that we have are in cave paintings. So they probably go back to the Neolithic period. And there appear to be three forms of dance. So there are ritual type dances, which usually involve imitating animals in nature, say for instance, to get assistance in helping in a hunt. Then there's the war dance, which is a mental preparation, a morale boost. Maybe there's a ritual component as well. And there's also entertainment, which is a stress release. So roughly 3000 BCE, civilizations appeared worldwide in the Near East, Northern Africa, and Asia. So this allowed for specialized professions to manifest. That included dancing. Moving forward a couple of thousand years, we find that Plato praised dance for its educational values. So dance in Greece often recreated mythological stories and had a strong connection with theater and festivals. Normally groups would dance and their movements would be inspired by nature. The Golden Age in Greece ended in 130 BCE when the Roman Empire conquered Greece. The Romans didn't value the dance and it began to degrade. The only acceptable form of dance to the Romans was a war dance, which originated from the Greek Pyrrhic dance. The Christians, however, carried the legacy of Greek dance culture as they incorporated a lot of folk music and dance into their rituals. However, in 380 CE, Christianity became the official religion of the Roman Empire and everything changed. Roman governors removed dance elements from their rituals as they found them to be pagan. In 476 CE, the Roman Empire collapsed, but dance still didn't regain its position in the church. In medieval times, however, a new attitude towards dance began, and it slowly began to regain prominence. Even though the articles didn't point this out, during the Renaissance, which literally means a revitalization, you had an embracing of pagan elements. So Europeans started to look at Greek and Roman literature, and that began to be incorporated into sculptures and painting and probably music and dance. So you could see it as a paganization of Europe. In Greece today, moving forward a few hundred years more, there are over 4,000 dances which have been passed down from generation to generation. Each part of the country has its own signature dances with different melodies. Greece has had periods of turmoil, and dance allows people to express their sadness and their joy. Now, for the average person, when they think of Greek dance, they think of the Zorba or the Siritaki. However, it's not traditional, and it was put together specifically for the movie Zorba the Greek to complement the music composed by Mike Theodorakis. After the movie came out and was a huge hit, the dance spread worldwide. The dance starts off slowly and then speeds up. It's performed in Greek taverns and at many different events, including baptisms, birthdays, and weddings. I remember going along to a 21st birthday party more years than I care to admit to for a buddy of mine. He was a Greek guy, and he got up and performed the Zorba with a group of other people. So it was really big in Australia as well. Then there's the Hasapiko dance, which is also known as Mekilarion, which means the butcher, as it came from the Butchers Guild in Constantinople in Byzantine times. So the point is that a lot of these dances in Greece have come down over many, many generations. And I'm not an expert on Greek dance, but I would hope that in far-flung villages, you may have elements of ancient dance still preserved and being danced today, but maybe the group could shed some more light on that.
Thank you so very much. You did a lot of research, and it shows. We're going to get back to dance. I want to go to Apollonius now to find out where his.
Oh shit! I'm sorry. I'm sorry to swear. I jumped the gun.
No,
You
nothing's.
just asked me if I wanted to talk about dance. It was like, yep, this is it. I'm going. And
You're among
I'm
among
really sorry.
friends.
I'm sorry, Apollonius.
That's okay. Very
Damn.
interesting. Okay. So a little bit of news from me. My book, Secret Texts of Hellenic Polytheism, is in print, and
All right.
copies are in the mail. I was hoping to have some to show to you, but they haven't arrived yet. So, but anyway, they exist in physical form. So I'm looking forward to that. And the only other real big news, I guess, is that in July, I'm going to be doing 2 workshops at the Mystic South Conference. One will be on Platon and his Platonic pagan philosophy, and the other will be the Ascent by Love from my book on Hypatia. So theurgical ascent by one of the 3 major paths: love, trust, and truth or wisdom. And this is the path of love. So it's based on the Plato Symposium and Diotima's description of really one of the first descriptions of a theurgic ascent that we have. And you Brandy and Tony have heard essentially this workshop that I've given at Pantheacon in the past. So it'll be a version of that, updated version. That's in July, by the way, July in Atlanta, Georgia.
Please, for all of you, all these wonderful things you're doing, let me know about them, and I will put them out there. I got my Facebook account, my original one, back. So there were like 30,000 people in that network. So I got them back now, so I can actually spread the word and spread the word widely again. So I'm very happy about that. That was one of the things that mixed in with the soup of my life for since the last Theurgy forum. Thank you so very much, Apollonius. Everybody's doing awesome things, and I'm looking forward to reading all of your works and talking about them in future shows. We'll return now to Tony and his research, and we'll go to Brandy. Brandy, you are involved in dancing.
Yeah, and I want to say, Tony, I just love this group of people. I mean, you ask us a question, we could throw down a lecture like that. So thank you so much. That's really awesome. And Hercules, did you say you have 30,000 people on Facebook? I don't know anybody who has 30,000 people on a Facebook page. That's amazing.
I have 18,000 people in my Arnold Schwarzenegger group alone. I do Sword and Sandal Cinema, which is the pop culture that I grew up in with the movies, and I include stuff with comic books and what, but mythology lives on in popular culture. So I've been following it my entire life, and on Facebook I've been making groups and attracting people to it. So I have like 3,000 here, 2,000 there, 60 there, you know, they're all over, but cumulatively there's a lot of people. I was very upset when I lost my Facebook account because I had to start over again. So now the challenge is, since I tried rebuilding everything, to kind of merge what was with what is, and you know, refocus it. So again, it's a joyous task though, because I'm really happy that I got the original account back. I was feeling bad because I couldn't offer people like a wide audience. I had less than 1,000 with the new account. So that, you know, now I could, you know, speak with my megaphone and reach more people with what everybody's doing.
That's great. Oh, that's wonderful. Well, that's really exciting. And Hercules, I hope that we come back to you, because I feel a little, I don't know. I do Greek dancing, but you're Greek. I'm sure you have danced.
I've danced on stage. I'll get into that when you share your stuff.
All right. Well, I'll share my might in that case. I have danced for a number of years in the Balkan folk dance community, and I also have a friend whose name is Yvonne Hunt, who is not herself Greek, but she lived in Greece for a long time. She went as a young woman attracted to dance. She danced for a while with the Dora Stratou dancers, and she has written a book called Greek Dance. So I highly recommend this book. I didn't check before this whether it was still in print, but I'm sure you can find copies of it. She went all over Greece and studied the dances in various places. So she taught Ted and I to speak Greek, and the first time we went to Greece, that was very helpful. Then I went again to a dance seminar she did in Thessaloniki at this time of year. So we went to this little village, the village of the Anastonaria, and you may recognize that name because those are the folk who do fire walking, and they do that in the fall. In the springtime, they do something else. They do a ritual in the village where they walk around the town square, and the men take a plow and hit the earth with the plow while all the women look on, you know, adoringly. and the children dress up in clothes like in Halloween. They dress up in costumes. So that was just enormously interesting, and I think you might want to return to that. And also, you know, just looking at the television this time of year, there are all of these folk customs around the spring, and specifically around dance. So you get people with headdresses, really big headdresses, wearing cowbells, jumping up and down, and even engaging in dancing. So there's that whole like springtime in Greece kind of thing. But the dances too, I do a bunch. I'm fond of the dances of Hieros. I just love this sway, you know, Pogonisios, those kinds of dances. And I go to Glendee's. We go to as Tony said, the churches do the dances. So they'll throw a feast day. You know, the church has a saint on that feast day. Everybody comes and dances. And there's a big community here in Seattle where there are people who play in live bands. So we go and we're doing that for a while. And it does go back, right? I mean, these dances are contiguous, as Tony said. They're everywhere, and you can see the vases. There are paintings on the vases of people doing dancing. So I think that, you know, there is a connection, and that the rhythms have meaning. And they have effects. There, I'll stop there because I could geek out on that. But that's kind of my
Geek out.
The 5/4 rhythm, it's a really interesting rhythm. If you've danced those dances, a dance that's in 5/4 gives you this kind of lilting feeling. So Teddy and I, we take some of these dances and incorporate them into our own rituals. We invoke Aletheia with the 5/4 dance, for example, and we create chants that move with that dance. So I think dance is a really important part of magical culture, and really, I know that there are theurgic components. There are dancers in the turn of the century who looked at Greek dances and recreated them. Isadora Duncan recreated a form of dance looking at Greek vases, and she and Ruth St. Denis would go put on deities, and they did this as a conscious act of theurgy. There's a book called Dance Was Her Religion, which talks about what they would do to invoke the deities as they danced. So in addition to sitting practice, we can do dancing practice in theurgy. All right,
That is awesome. And I think I have one of those books. I do have a book on dance and ritual somewhere in my library. I came across it like a month ago. So I'll see if I can remember where I put it and take and read it. Thank you. And Apollonius, do you have anything to share about dance?
Well, not too much. I do dance in ritual, but it's usually more ecstatic dance. I've read some about the traditional Greek dances, and it does seem like there is a continuous tradition. I mean, this sort of thing survives. You know, it evolves, of course, but it really survives for thousands of years. But I haven't done too much. I haven't done any really traditional Greek dance, not in a theurgic context either. But you know, it is interesting. A number of connections, I think. You know, talking about fertility, springtime fertility. I mean, stamping on the ground is a very widespread fertility technique, awakening the earth essentially. And so I think that's why, you know, you especially find some of these dances. And I assume the banging on the ground that Brandy described is, again, it's, you know, it's to awaken the earth and enliven it. The other thing I wanted to mention, though, you know, to add to what Tony said, was when we often forget that Greek drama was a choral performance. And the chorus was dancing. And there are various sorts of esoteric meanings to some of the dances and things like that. They're imitating the motion of the planets and the cosmos. And so there was a definite, at least, interpretation applied to the choral dances within ancient Greek drama. And I mean, the other thing that often gets forgotten is that ancient Greek drama was a theurgical ritual. It was conducted in the Temple of Dionysus, but right in the center of the stage was an altar to Dionysus, and the chorus would circle around that altar. And so all of the action was taking place around an altar to Dionysus. So it was very much of a religious festival. And you know, we separate these things. We think, oh, it's drama, it's for entertainment. But this was a citywide group theurgical ritual that was conducted, you know, every year. And dance was an essential part of it too. It was an integrated artwork of the scenery, of course, and the texts and the song and the dance all integrated together. And it shows how in theurgy you can bring all of these things together. You know, we often think in theurgy about, well, you use this incense, you use this stone, use this plant, so on and so forth. That's true, but you also use words, you use rhythms and meters, as Brandy said, you use particular scales or tones, and you use particular dance forms. It's all part of connecting with the energy of that particular deity and invoking or evoking that deity. So, you know, that's been kind of my interest in the dance is really what else is going on besides just a good dance, but what, and a sort of a community bonding experience, but sort of the more ritual aspects of it as well. And it's maybe a little bit, neglected in modern magic. Isidore Duncan and St. Denis are good examples. But, if you think about the Golden Dawn and, various magical orders such as that, I don't see so much, or maybe I'm just not aware of it. If the rest of you have some evidence of more use of dance in more modern magical systems.
Yeah, we would teach people when we were teaching. We spent 5 years doing beginner magic classes, and we would teach them spiral dance because pagans
Spiral dance.
dance. Yeah, the spiral dance. And if you dance with people who know how to dance, it's really for just a couple of things you can learn that are really helpful, that will help you not like hit other people when you're doing that dance, right?
Yeah.
But in general, no, the ceremonial orders do circumambulation, so we work around the temple, but that's it. And I yeah, that's all I know about. But yeah, I've tried to teach dance because I think it's important.
Tony, do you know of any?
I was involved with a group that started off in South America. They called themselves the Gnostic movement, even though they weren't really based on Gnostic teachings. But I remember one of the exercises that they had was that you would spin around like a whirling dervish, and then once you'd spun around as many times as you could, that would open up a gateway to experience the causal dimension. So it was a way of bypassing the astral and going to the causal dimension. It was just a particular teaching that they had. While Bruce was talking, I found myself thinking about Gurdjieff, how he traveled and went to various monasteries and picked up their techniques of sacred dance and then preserved some of those dances. And given how Christianity has taken the best out of paganism and preserved it, I think that there'd have to be a possibility that some of the dances preserved in monasteries were sacred dance techniques from ancient Greece and possibly other cultures as well.
Thank you. With me, I never did dance ritually per se, but I'm Greek, so I was born into the whole thing with the siftaki, with the chasaptiko, with the choriatika, with the tsifteteli, the snake dance, and it was always very much a part of what being Greek is all about. And I remember in grade school, I went to a Greek parochial school. I was so good at dance that I would dance at their events and celebrations on the stage. And we did things with swords. We did, all sorts of stuff with the dancing. And recently, on my underworld journey that I went through recently, I remembered all this. I'd kind of pushed it behind my mind, and the last time the dancing part of me came out was when my eldest son got married. And I danced at his wedding for, hours and hours and hours ceaselessly. But it's something that kind of takes you over and your body moves. And up until, I guess maybe my 30s, my 40s, I used to dance all the time. Not only Greek dances, but slow dancing and other types of dancing as well. And it was very much a part of who I was. So in my underworld journey, I kind of remembered all that and wondered why I stopped. So I think I shared with all of you, maybe, or just with Brandy, that I spent the whole day playing choriatika, tragudia, like Greek folk songs, like ceaselessly. And that's atypical of me. I don't really listen to music that much, but something in me needed it. And now I've been breaking out and dance more often. So I guess that part of me is coming back. And the words in the songs are often very blasphemous, like in the Rembetiko, with the Tsifteteli, one of the lines is "Thakatevuni angeli, nachorepsun sipteteli." The angels will descend from heaven and dance the snake dance. And later on, the next stanza is how the devil's already there, dancing. So there are all sorts of things that, if you pay attention to the words, they're really rebellious and really blasphemous. But that's part of the dance. The Tifteteli is often merged into belly dancing, and that's how most people know it. But in the Greece that I was growing up in, and again, Tony and I had a conversation that reminded me of that. That Greece no longer exists. But in the Greece that I grew up in Greece, men danced. It was unseemly for women to dance. So if you went there, people would break out in dancing at the cafenio, while music's playing the jukebox, and it was scandalous if a woman joined the dancing, except at weddings when it was acceptable for women to also dance. But here in America, in Greek American culture, everybody danced. There wasn't that distinction between the men and the women that was in Greece. And again, I thank you for your suggestions, because I'm sure they contributed for topics, because I'm sure they contributed to that reawakening that I had. But I feel that Greek part of me now reawakened, and I want to dance all the time.
Yeah, and in the festivals, the dances we've gone to, the night ends with the Sispitelli, and then everybody looks at each other and goes home, and we have a suspicion about what they do when they go home.
It's a snake dance. The angels from heaven descend and dance with the devil. So.
And you really have to wonder, what ancient roots that dance has. Well, and the other thing too is, there's a lot of mythology about dancing too. The Kiberi dancing to hide the infant Zeus crying and everything. And there were apparently fraternities of dancers, or armed dancers typically, that were, again, probably, we say everything's for fertility, but a lot of it probably was for fertility, both of the land and of the people. And, beating spears on shields.
On the shields, yeah. The Kurites, the Koribantes, the Dactyli, the Idaean dactyls, they danced, like you said, stamping their feet and hitting their shields with the weapons to hide the cries of Zeus from Father Kronos at the time. Yeah, my underworld journey took me much deeper into the Idaean dactyls and the Kurites and the Koribantes and the Kabiri especially, which is Lemnos, the island I'm from. They had mysteries similar to the ones in Samothraki. And that's been kind of like a background life study of mine. And now that's merging with all sorts of other interesting information, ranging from Phoenicia throughout the Mediterranean, the Pelasgians, and coming together in weird configurations that are like really interesting.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, I hope we get to those conversations one day, because I see you shaking your head, so I'm sure these insights have come to you as well. I guess if we're finished with dancing, we could move on to sacred marriages, and we'll go to Brandy because she brought up that topic.
I was going to ask you, going back, because it's pertinent, going back to the springtime rituals. Did you grow up with some of those rituals? They seem to be common, at least when I went to Greece, and it was like probably 15 years ago already that I did this dance seminar, but it seemed like it was really widespread, that there were the country just kind of broke out in these springtime celebrations, and particularly the dress. So do you have any like more information about that?
They were things that Greeks do. They were ancient, but nobody really knew how ancient. Tony and I, in a recent show that we did, I talked about this a little bit, because when I started searching for survivals from antiquity here, I came across Wicca, of course. That was like one of the first things I came across, and to talk about famtrads. And I had an issue with the famtrad information, because I could identify with a lot of this, but it had nothing to do with what Wicca was talking about. It was just things that people did. We had all these rituals for the evil eye, and there were people that did that and knew the rituals, and a lot of that was lost because you could only pass it on to your deathbed with to someone of the same sex, or so there were all these like rules. So a lot of that stuff got lost, but still they had all this magical knowledge. And once I went to a healer like that to treat my pneumonia, and they were chanting over it. It sounded like arithmetic over frankincense on a charcoal briquette, and anointed me with olive oil. But anyway, there was a rich magical tradition. I've observed there's like a Seder ceremony on Lemnos, where the satyrs were dressed like pants made out of fur. And there was a night when you couldn't go out because if they caught you, they beat you up. And it's only later when I researched and found that Seder ceremony is like very ancient, and Lemnos was known for it, the Seder of Lemnos. They had jumping over bonfires and all sorts of things, but it wasn't a way of conveying a magical tradition or honoring a pagan past, because they'd forgotten why they did these things. But because at the time when I was growing up, they didn't even have television in rural Greece. They had just radio. And when I talked about television, my uncle hit me and told people I'm lying. I'm making up stories. So it was just something that Greeks did because we're Greeks. So we had all these rituals and all these ceremonies and all these practices, but they weren't, at least maybe they were among a small group of people, but generally it was just traditions that we were honoring and respecting. It wasn't part of a secret tradition that we were guarding.
Mhm.
That's kind of, I think, an anthropological commonplace, that when you ask people about traditional practices, they usually can't give any sort of explanation why they do it. They just say, well, this is what we do. This is part of being who we are,
Being who we are.
and that's all you need to say. I mean, that's a sufficient explanation. We want to have some deeper explanation, some roots in mythology or some sort of, metaphysical system that explains it. But I think that, that's our intellectualizing of everything.
And people would say things that would lead you to, like, if you knew mythology, which again, not everybody did, the who are keeping the traditions, but like when it's raining, some people said vrechio theos, that God is raining. And it's not, so there's a God to rain, and or theos vrondai, the God thunders, so in the there's an echo of that, but there wasn't an understanding that they were talking about Zeus, in that.
Although I think why we think about it or talk about it is that we like to see a continuity with the past, and we like to see pagan survivals in these customs. And I was thinking about this village we went to where they did the striking the earth. The church was really clear that it was pagan because they would set up a sign in their parking lot saying "this way to the festival." And then my teacher said, Yvonne said that the first time she went to the village, she trundled into the church and sat down, and it occurred to her after a while, this was not the festival. They were trying redirecting her into the church, and she walked out to the town square where they were actually doing the ritual. So the church certainly is clear that there's a pagan like sort of import to some of this stuff.
But they indirectly support it by turning a blind eye.
Right. Yeah. It was one of the things I've heard that I'll play to you guys and see if you agree. One of the sort of assessments is that in Eastern Europe, there was never that definitive break or the definitive showdown between the church and cult common religion as there was in the West, where you got strung up and burned as a witch if you did that. So I think that, yeah, you're right. It does kind of get supported, and the churches still do push that culture together because it's not pagan necessarily, right? It's what we do.
It's what we do.
Yeah.
And like there's a Saint Odysseus, you know, Hieros Odysseus, and like if you study a little bit, you'll find that like Hercules became Saint Luke because at the time of the rise of Christianity, he was known more for his physician skills, you know, through gymnasiums and hot springs. So because he was primarily a healer at the time, and there's even graffiti behind one of the Hercules statues who goes, "Oh, what sorry days I've encountered." They made me into, you know, a Christian saint. That's not an exact quote, but it's something like that. So there was an understanding, and I'm excited for Apollonius's book because Platon tried to keep the memory alive and to, you know, revive the memory. And some of my deepest personal spiritual insights came out of Nonnus. And, you know, Nonnus is somebody who's discounted very widely, but he preserved beliefs from late antiquity. And I find Nonnus's works echoing in like modern theosophy to a phenomenal extent. You know, he's in the weirdest places. So the things that people believed in late antiquity are still with us, but people don't even know that these come from late antiquity. These you know, beliefs or this information, but they keep popping up.
Yeah, it's a very interesting, the Eastern tradition, you know, like we tend to say, oh, well, you know, the Roman Empire fell, but it didn't fall in the East until 1453. You know, the Eastern Roman Empire continued on just fine, thank you. And it is interesting because I think because of the Greek tradition was so much more central to it, that many of these things, these practices, these ideas got preserved, you know, often Christianized to some extent. And there was a real tension there. You know, you find all of the time through the centuries up to Platon and beyond, you know, people getting in trouble for, you know, taking the myths a little too seriously. You know, and reading the ancient literature, not just to get your grammar well right, but, you know, because you actually thought it was good. And, you know, Plato, you know, was, on the other hand, he was a hero of Greek philosophy, but on the other hand, you know, the monks in Mount Athos spit whenever his name was mentioned. Because he was the devil. You know, he was the one that was most likely to attract people out of Christianity and back to paganism. And that was a danger that went through the centuries. And you find, you know, a whole series of figures of people that either got in trouble or just managed to keep out of trouble, you know, writing about pagan philosophy and pagan mythology, you know, and they would add there, of course, I don't believe this, or of course, nobody believes this. They'd add that to it, you know, to try and cover themselves. And, you know, often it worked, not always. So it's a very interesting, I think it's a very interesting how, you know, the Byzantine Empire, the Eastern Roman Empire held this tension, you know, for century after century after century. And, you know, preserved again a lot of the rituals that, you know, their pagan origins were maybe just not mentioned, you know, or were overlooked, because, you know, I would say they were good rituals, but they also were, you know, they were what the people did.
Athos is still very active. I could vouch for Athos. I've had 2 visits from people from Athos in my entire life. They're very much aware of what people are doing and saying and so forth. Again, it was the amount of information they had on me was frightening. So I know that Athos is still very active in looking at those things. So I don't doubt that they've kept this up for a very long time. One of the things I will share is that I was told that their sole purpose is to prevent the Decathlon from rising again in the hearts of people. So that was something I was told directly. And a lot of the organizations, like a HEPA is a powerful force in Greek culture. So that's kind of like the Greek Illuminati, and they're very active and they're very visible also. A HEPA will have nothing to do with me because of my beliefs. So, you know, I get routinely ignored when I try to initiate some sort of dialogue or set up an interview with a HEPA. So, yeah, these things are real, and they still exist to this day. And they have kept very much alive inadvertently, but they've also squashed a lot as well.
Tony, did you have something? I think I talked over you at one point. Did you have something you wanted to add?
It was just a tangent to what Apollonius was saying. I went to a solstice ritual put on by the Russian community. So again, we're not talking about Greece, we're talking about Russians. And what these people did was that they brought in a shaman from Siberia. And what the shaman was tapping into were little nursery rhymes and things that these people had learnt as kids. So she seemed to be pushing the line that there was all this hidden wisdom, hidden shamanic wisdom from Siberian shamans encoded in nursery rhymes and children's stories. So there are all these people there, I don't know how much experience they had, but they're all following the rituals. It was all in Russian. It was so lovely ritual. I felt very blessed being there. So I was thinking that it's quite possible that other countries have done the same thing. There are all sorts of survivals in places that aren't immediately obvious to the casual observer. I'm also quite intrigued by what Hercules was saying just then about the monks on Mount Athos being very wary of dodecatheism, you know, the worship of the 12 Olympic gods coming back. So they see it as something that's very real, and not something that was suppressed 2,000 years ago, but something that could well rise again. Well, obviously, we'd like to see that happen. I'd like to see people have a choice to worship whatever they want to worship. So like I said, I was just going off on a bit of a tangent there. It wasn't all that relevant to the discussion. So, you know, but you are, so I'm telling you.
One of, again, now I'm going to share this, but very briefly, because I've been interacting with some of the movements that were not recently, but maybe 10, 20 years ago, with the groups that were trying to revive the Katheon. And it seemed to me, my impression was, and why I pulled back, was because they seemed to want to replace Greek Orthodoxy and become what Greek Orthodoxy is. And, you know, I have reservations about religions that comes from going to Greek parochial school for 8 years. So I don't really think that a pagan orthodoxy would be that much better than a Christian orthodoxy or any other type of orthodoxy. I had the same problem with the nationalist type of organizations. I was contacted by a couple of those. And as a Greek, the way they were approaching with antiquity, and you know, they were conjuring images of ancient heroism. It was very appealing, especially to someone who's into the myths, especially the hero myths like I am. But I had to remind myself of what this seemed, you know, where thoughts like these lead. If you tie them to nationalism. So I didn't get involved in any of the activities of the people who were either courting me or trying to dialogue with me. So that's where I stand on all this stuff. That, you know, I'd love to see it out in the open. I would, but I don't want it to become another repressive system that enslaves people's thoughts and fills them with fear. So.
No, those are excellent points. Yeah.
Yep.
Are we ready to move on to sacred marriages?
Yeah, I'll just say, just briefly, because I can't let it go, that today there is because the day is important. This is the very day in Madurai that an entire city is going absolutely insane. Insane, celebrating the marriage of the goddess Meenakshi Amman to Sundareshwarar, who's held to be kind of an avatar of Shiva, but that's kind of a later overlay. This is at least 2,000-year-old ceremony, and so it's there are these sacred marriages that we see in the past in the Mediterranean cultures that went away as Christianity, took hold. It's still extant in India, so it's really fun. I've been watching the live streams because it's not just one day. I mean, this is the culmination of like 2 weeks. They've been partying for 2 weeks in Madurai. I want to tell you, every night everybody's out in the street, and they're grand floats and elephants that are lit with electric lights, and little girls and little boys dressing up like all of the deities in the myths. I mean, it's really fun. But the whole idea of the sacred marriage, it happening now, it's kind of interesting, right? There's this sort of springtime energy, and there's the idea that there's the land, the marriage of the person to the land. So you might get the marriage of the king to the land, or the king to the goddess of the land. So that's kind of part of what's going on there too. But it's definitely going to be, it's my next research. So this came like as I was coming on to the sacred marriage of a Hindu goddess, William Harmon. I've got 10 books in the mail. That'll be that's my next obsessive research project.
That is awesome.
Yeah, and if we needed to turn it to Greek and Theurgy, I'm sure there is a sacred marriage of Hera and Zeus, and that's on my list of things. I'm wearing Hera today. I'm sure though that there was I remember there being a festival, so I'm interested in sort of looking at that in detail too.
I'll add to that after everybody else had a turn, but thank you. Apollonius, Tony, who wants to go next?
Why don't you go, Tony?
Well, the Greek term for sacred marriage is Hieros Gamos. It's also translated as sacred wedding feast or sacred sexual intercourse. It's a technical term of a mythical or ritual union between a god and a goddess, but more generally a divine and a human being. So quite often a king and a goddess. In Greek myth, the marriage of Hera and Zeus serves as a model for the Hieros Gamos, the sacred marriage. So there's a reference that I can give you. It's the book of the Iliad, chapter 14, verses 330 to 60. So there are a number, as Brandy pointed out, there are a number of festivals for Hera in Greece that form a reenactment of the marriage. So that's reenacted at Knossos, and there's a celebration of the institution of the marriage in Attica. Attica is the city-state around Athens, and there are other festivals that honor Hera. There's the Herea at Olympia, the Daedala at Plataea, and those are the famous sanctuaries at Samos and at Argos. So they tend to celebrate Hera's role as a marriage deity, but they don't necessarily reenact the sacred marriage. Other people point out that the myth of Persephone and Hades also suggests a sacred marriage. So that was celebrated at Locri in southern Italy, and there's compelling evidence that the Greeks also believed in mortal divine couplings. Well, we see that in many of the legends of the heroes. The heroes were supposed to have been half mortal, half divine. There was the Anthesteria festival in Athens, which dramatized an annual marriage between the god Dionysus and the mortal Basilina, which means queen, the wife of the Athenian religious official called the Basileus. So there are Greek vases showing the god in a ship chariot or a mask of Dionysus on a pillar surrounded by women in festival mode may refer to such a ritual. And the last thing I was going to say was that there's a feminist scholar who suggested that some female priesthoods in Greece, especially those for virgin goddesses, were engaged in an attempt to achieve parthenogenesis, which is a virgin conception and birth through a divine union with a god. I can also go on about the the month of marriage, Gamelion, but I'll sort of open it up to other people.
Thank you. Well,
Thank you.
Tony.
Very
Fabulous.
scholarly. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think that those are great examples, and the Hades Persephone one is especially interesting. It puts a whole kind of different perspective on what we normally think of that myth. But I think the idea of a sacred marriage also you find a lot in Pythagorean philosophy, for example, because the Pythagoreans were very much about opposites. And, there was a famous table of opposites that was headed by male and female, but also odd and even and many other different things, some rather sexist in their interpretation. But the point was that they were interested in duality because the first principle is unity. And for the ancient Greeks, one was not really considered a number, because in a sense, it's not many. And so the odd and even numbers began with 2 and 3. And so 1 really was before even odd and even. And so you can't have much of a universe with just the 1. And so you needed the 2, which then allows there to be a multiplicity of things. But then there's also, you need a sort of a reunion of the opposites to create new things. And of course, sexual reproduction is the model for that. So that's why you find in a lot of philosophical systems and in a lot of mythology, some sort of primeval god and goddess pairs mating to produce the cosmos. Uranos and Gaia, or Kronos and Rhea, Zeus and Hera. We have these series of male-female pairs. But often, like in the Orphic cosmologies, you begin with a phanes, perhaps, with some sort of bisexual deity. Again, it's that unified sort of the original wholeness, which then has to divide in order to create a complicated universe, a universe with lots of stuff in it, lots of things going on. So I think, in many cases, the sacred marriage is whether the sacred marriage is in mythology, like between Zeus and Hera, or whether it's in ritual, so some sort of sex magic, for example, or some sort of ritual sacred marriage, or whether it's between gods and mortals, where you have one divine figure and one mortal figure, like with Dionysus and the Basilean in Athens. These are all ways of sort of reconstituting that original unity, but in a complex form, in a way that causes new things to come into being. And I think this is, of course, stuff that Carl Jung, spent a lot of his time investigating. But I think that basically it's that intuition that cosmology has to kind of go through these phases of separation from an initial unity, and then recombinations of some sort of opposites that, because we're human beings, we tend to call male and female, but some sort of polar opposites that we then try and that have to recombine to create something new, whether it's the crops, or whether it's a child, or whether it's something else, a society, or an alchemy, is the same thing that goes on in alchemy, of course, as well. Which again is based on a lot of this same kind of philosophy. So I think, to my mind, this is kind of the interesting thing about the Hieros Gamos, is that if you like, sort of I would call it the metaphysical meaning of it, is it's this recombination that if we understand how that works, then we can understand how to combine the opposites to get something to get something new. And I think that's, in these traditional mythologies and religious festivals like you find in India and in ancient Greece, and in many other places too, people understand this at some level, whether it's, may not be philosophers, but they understand at some level that you need this mixture of different things in order to create new complexity. Of course, I mean here complexity in a positive sense. Stuff, things that exist, things that do stuff and don't just kind of sit there in either chaos or in just sort of a static purity that does nothing.
Wow,
Anyway.
you've all given me tons of stuff to meditate upon for the next month or so, maybe. One of the things that didn't happen because of the pandemic is I was planning in the Hieros Gamos here where I live. And basically Athena is the goddess of the polis, or of the location. So our location happens to be here now. And I'm active and have a ceremonial function in my community. So this was going to be not only reaffirming my vows to Athena on a personal level, but also reaffirming the energies that I represent to my local, place. And the mayor was going to do the ceremony. So, this had moved along quite a bit. And we were going to do it in, mythic finery, inspired more by sword and sandal movies than anything else, but that's okay. So that was going to be in Hieros Gamos, and the Hieros Gamos is very central to my own personal mythology also, because according to the theosophical view of the labors of Hercules, my birth month is May. I'm a Gemini, so the labor that corresponds with that is the golden apples of the Hesperides. So that's been a lifetime study too. So again, you guys have all given me dimensions now that I hadn't touched before. So I have something that I need to pursue. But I've always thought of it in those terms. A lot of these ceremonies have a practical purpose as well. And they help you renew commitments or express commitments that it's difficult, to explain in words that aren't based on the same mythic concepts you happen to be using.
Yeah, no, I think that's really important. Those rituals like that are essential, and they're essential because they're things you really can't do any other way.
Mm-hmm. It's 10 o'clock. I don't know who, I don't want to keep people longer than the time they have to budget. So
I gotta go give my guy his dinner.
Okay. Because I could talk about this stuff all night, and this is a special treat for me all the time. Who else am I going to talk to about these things? So
Yeah, you're it. You guys are it. I could throw down and say, I have found this thing. Everybody else is like, please don't talk to me about that again.
Same here.
Yeah.
Well, thank you all very much. Is anything else? Is there anything else that we should be looking for on the horizon? And of course, I'm looking forward to our next conversation already. Apollonius, do you have anything else happening that we should be aware of?
No, not immediately. But those workshops in July are coming up, and the book is out and in the air somewhere. So
If I don't get it in a week, I'm going to contact Llewellyn and
that's right. Well, I'm sure they'll send you a review copy if you ask. Anyway.
Yes, they usually do. So now that I know it's in the ethers, I'm going to be eagerly waiting for it. Thank you so very much. And Tony, how about you?
The only workshop that I have coming up is that one that you and I are going to be talking at. It's a virtual event in New York. I don't even remember what it's called. I haven't spoken at it yet. I'm on the list. Yeah, something like that. I'm on the list of presenters. I was asked to submit 2 ideas, and I don't know which one of those has been accepted, so I don't know which one to prepare for. But I am looking forward to it. So this is going to be the first time that you and I have spoken together in an event. Well, not together, but at the same event.
I haven't submitted my ideas yet because I got caught up in other things, but I've talked at that event for several years, and I cover it on our show, so I'm sure they'll be understanding of my being late. I'm looking forward to that too. I'm gonna the changes that I've gone through recently that are making me rewrite my contribution to our collective endeavor. What insights I gleaned are going to make their way into what I was planning on talking about, and they're going to change one of the things I was planning on talking about. So it's all good. Eventually, it'll all work out. I'm looking forward to that too, Tony. Thank you so very much. And
Yeah.
last, but certainly not least, our muse, Brandy Williams.
I want to mention my friend Dr. Megan Rose. I think she goes by that. Her last name is also Wolever. She's written a book called Spirit Marriage. So this is a great time to mention it. Her book has just come out. It's in print now, and I highly recommend it. It's a study of people who do exactly that, who do a marriage with spirits, and so it's right on topic here. So I recommend her book. And
I recommend it too, by the way.
oh,
So,
did you read it?
yeah,
Oh, cool. Yeah.
no,
And what's the name of your book again, Apollonius? Just
Secret Texts of Hellenic Polytheism. It's a mouthful. That's the main title. There's a subtitle.
Secret Cell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Secret Texts.
Brandy, could you write down the name of that book and also the previous two books that you
Yeah.
mentioned as well, either as a comment or privately, so I can track them down?
Oh, it's not that. Baba Yaga's book has also come out. The Baba Yaga's Book of Witchcraft.
Oh, very
Oh,
cool.
wow.
I've got a stack of books of fellow Llewellyn writers that I'm writing, reviews for. But yeah, Spirit Marriage. So pretty easy to remember that. I bet that that'll pull it up on Amazon.
And then there are the ones about sacred dance.
Oh yeah, Yvonne Hunt, called Greek Dance. Yeah, I'll send that out to us all in email.
Please, thank you. I'd really appreciate it.
We could do this on another show, but there's a whole tradition of the jinn that's incorporated into Greek folklore because of the Ottoman occupation. They don't call them jinn; they call them skies, or shadows. For some reason, Lemnos has a very rich history of the shadows, and that's something. As a kid, I got interviewed because I knew all these stories, that I got from my grandmother and other people, because I was curious about this. So somebody wrote a book and they interviewed me for it. That's a very interesting topic too, because it ties into spirit marriage, because many living people have conjugal relationships with the shadows or the jinn, and that's all sorts of. I haven't encountered these beliefs written down anywhere, but they're really interesting. So we can do a show on them.
Hercules, I actually did a workshop on the jinn a few years ago. So either we can talk about the jinn on the panel, or if you wanted to, we could do it on the Hellenismos thing. I could summarize the stuff that I covered on the jinn and use that as a launch point for you to talk about the Greek equivalents.
Okay, whatever we all decide.
Just a thought.
And again, I'm aiming for 2 shows a day now, and I've learned to use Zoom enough where I could take what we're doing and put it on YouTube. I can't edit it yet, but I'll get there eventually. Apollonius and Brandy, if you ever want to do a show on anything, just let me know and we'll make it happen. Okay.
Great. Thank you.
You're so productive. It's amazing.
I need to keep busy. I have akathisia. I can't sit still. So.
I don't know how you do it.
Well, another show. Thank you so very much. Enjoy dinner, and I will talk to everybody very soon. Thanks to everybody who's going to tune in on YouTube. This should be up by tomorrow morning, if all goes well.
Thanks, everyone.
Hello.
Thank you. Thanks. Bye.